welcoming prayer presentation with a poem from this little booklet. It's a Rumi poem, and it's entitled The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. She may be cleaning you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. We can't control the circumstances of life. We can choose to whether we're going to respond in a react in a knee-jerk way, or respond to love, with love, to wherever we are. So we're in the coronavirus pandemic. And although at times we do feel fearful and anxious, we have a choice. Do we wish to live without it and react out of that fear? Or are we going to be open and respond to love in the situations of our lives? Fear weakens the immune system. It does that constantly. We're in constant fear. Hope and gratitude strengthen the immune system. Jesus tells us in the Gospels, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. I think that's a wonderful invitation for these times, to be the light. I live in a small town, and I typically, I'm a walker, when I walk down the streets, I say hello to everybody. I don't need to know them. They live in the same town, they're neighbors. I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, no one even looks at me. People are afraid. So today I decided I'm going to employ a different strategy. I'll say hello to everybody even if they don't look at me. Why not? Why not just give someone a greeting? It's our choice how we want to move in these days, how we want to bring the powerful fruits of the inner room out into the world. I know it seems like all we have is rascally, pesky thoughts when we do our centering prayer, but powerful things are happening. Powerful graces are being given us in that inner room. And I know for myself that those graces are not given for Teresa. Those graces are given for everybody with whom I rub elbows. So I invite us to continue with the centering prayer, and definitely with the welcoming prayer as we move through these weeks and months ahead of us, knowing that we have choices. We definitely have choices. So I think another thing, I'm referring to this little booklet just because I think I know it's the only thing we really have printed about the welcoming prayer. And over the years, people who already do the welcoming prayer, when they've picked this up and they use it as a resource, they say it really, really helped deepen their practice. What I'm reading now is about that letting go, that last movement. And for those of us, for those on the call who are in 12-step programs, let go, let God is one of the fundamental aspects of that program. One of their slogans, I love the 12-step slogans, they're so practical. But my friends in 12-step programs, they say no one ever teaches how to let go. Well, welcoming prayer is a how-to method for letting go. And in this book, it describes it so well. Letting go means passing through the energy and not around it. Not running away or pushing it back into the unconscious through denial or distraction. One does not identify with it and act it out, but it allows it to be transformed by the simple act of sticking with it and experiencing it. That letting go, being with it. And in a similar way, the first movement, when we feel and sink into, one of my tendencies at times is to resist it. Resist what I am experiencing in my body. If we resist it, we make it more powerful. One of my guides in my life was my aunt, who is a religious sister, and she dealt with cancer patients all of her life. That was her ministry. And so I was learning the welcoming prayer and how to teach it. So I asked her name is Sister Mary Regina, I said, Sister, if I resist pain, do I make it more powerful? And she looked at me as if I had asked a very silly question. And she said, of course you do. So we want to, at times, resist the things that are happening in our body. But it does not serve us to do that. It doesn't serve us to resist it. We have thing I want to share now. And one of the, I think I have that PowerPoint up again, but I'm just lost. Okay. So there was a letting go phrase. And one of the things that we on the Welcoming Prayer team like to say, the issues are in the tissues. And they're a wonderful reminder to me that at times, sometimes I don't even know I'm upset until I begin to feel what's happening in my body. And that wonderful full self-in-action chart I used a while ago, it begins to show us that, the unconscious is surfacing, and the unconscious is actually stored in the body. And one of the things that I realize is that it's stored, and I don't know the exact mechanics, but I think some of the unconscious is stored in the body in the form of cellulite. So maybe if we do the welcoming prayer enough, we'll get rid of cellulite. But actually, people whom I've shared that with who do body work, they said that's true. That a lot of what's stored, the cellulite is the garbage of the tissues. But it's beyond that. It's to understand that we are incarnational beings, and that's the unconscious is stored right there. Now, some of us suffer from obsessive thinking, and I think that it's very possible in these times that the obsessive thinking may be even more prevalent. And as we don't have our normal routines, and sometimes my normal routine distracts me from some of the things that are maybe upsetting me. And so what we suggest you do is we suggest that you, instead of being caught in the trap of obsessive thinking, that you just use this particular phrase: no thought is worth thinking about. So if I'm starting to obsess about, I don't want to go to the grocery store, the lines are always long, I can blah, 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 how you can obsess about something like that, and just immediately break that with this phrase: no thought is worth thinking about. And then just begin to go into, just break that thought, and then see if it comes back again. So now what I'd like to do is lead us through another experience of the welcoming prayer. And just to remember that we're not going to resist, as I said, what's happening in our body. We're going to really feel and sink into it. And we're going to let go. We're going to experience what is there. So, as I said before, you don't necessarily have to close your eyes to do the welcoming prayer, but you can make that choice. And you can perhaps think about something that's upset you in the last week or so, or a person, and just feel and sink into what's happening in your body. Become one with the sensation. No resistance. All your attention is there. And if the body sensation moves, I invite you to move your attention with the body sensation. And then interiorly, follow along with me with the words of the welcoming prayer. Welcome. Welcome. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. Continue to feel and sink into what you are experiencing in your body. Welcome. Welcome. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. Welcome. Welcome. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. And I have another poem from our Welcoming Prayer booklet. It's called The Healing Time. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to life. All the unintended wounds, the purple and red scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones. Those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again, where I find them, the old wounds and the old misdirections, and I lift them up one by one, close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy. Those of us who do centering prayer, those of us who have a sitting practice are very fortunate in these times. We understand that life is not about perfection, that life is about being open. And from a centering prayer perspective, it's about opening to God's presence and action in every activity of life. To open. To not to be ashamed of wounds. To understand that a wound, when it's healed, is stronger. To understand that our woundedness is something that we all share as part of the human family. The welcoming prayer is not about a prayer of perfection. Do I always remember to do it? No. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I'm caught up in the situation. Sometimes I decide that I want a pity party. I don't advise that. You'll pay for pity parties. But hey, sometimes we do that. But I do invite us to remember that we have the option. When I am frustrated, and my frustration will often be obvious to me because I'm feeling something intensely in my body, or my thinking is erratic, or I want to do stupid things, or I just feel a strong emotion. I have the opportunity in those situations not to react from that energy that's come up from the unconscious, but to respond to love, to turn to God in that particular situation. That is the freedom of the welcoming prayer. And I can tell you, over years, we become less reactive. Do we become perfectly non-reactive? No. It's a process. It's a process. But it is definitely a process of opening to God's presence and action in our lives. I mentioned that no thought is worth thinking about. And I can tell you, I don't use that as much as I use this phrase. This has become one of my mantras. This moment, nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. I get myself in trouble because I start to worry about tomorrow, next week, next month. And then I'm a crazy lady. And this little mantra helps me. This is the only moment I have, right here and now. It's sufficient, this moment. Nothing more, nothing less, nothing else. I have everything that I need to be happy in this moment. I truly do. I was thinking at the break time, I was thinking of a mnemonic that's always been helpful to me with thoughts in centering prayer. The 4 R's: resist no thought, retain no thought, react emotionally to no thought, return ever so gently to the sacred word. I think those 4 R's apply very well to our emotions, our body sensations. Resist no emotion. Retain no emotion. React emotionally to no emotion. And return to the welcoming prayer. One of the things that I learned from Mary Mazowski when I started the welcoming prayer was she disabused me of thinking that there were such things as good emotions and bad emotions. You know, joy is a good emotion, happiness is a good emotion, anger is bad, and resentment is bad. And what Mary said, and I agree with her 100%, is she said that emotions, one of the main roles of emotions, is really to show us what we need to look at in life. So indeed, the person who always knows how to push my buttons is actually a very real gift to me. It doesn't feel like it at the time, but that person gives me the opportunity to open to God's healing presence and action. We'll talk briefly about some of the fruits of the welcoming prayer. And we say that the fruits are in attitudes, behavior, consciousness. So what we often see in the attitude, our attitude can change to serenity, to accept the things I cannot change. Instead of resisting, fighting, because there are things, and especially we know now, that we cannot change. And the behavior is that courage to change the things I can. And sometimes they're small things. As I said, when I will be walking in the near future in my town, I'm going to say hello to people, even if they don't acknowledge my presence. And consciousness the wisdom to know the difference. For myself, we have had different words to the welcoming prayer since Mary Mazowski passed it on to us. When I learned it, we had 4 letting go phrases, and a lot of people said there were too many words. So we said, okay, well, we'll see what we can help you out. And our last change was in 2016, and we changed the letting go to say, and embrace this moment as it is. And I'll be honest with you. When the people on the Welcoming Prayer Service team suggested that to me, I resisted it. I didn't want to change my beloved welcoming prayer, but I did. I said, well, I'll give it a try. And what's happened is, I understand for me, is outside of the prayer, because I'm saying those words during the welcoming prayer, outside the welcoming prayer, I'm much, much more open to embracing what's happening, to embrace just what is. And then that opens my tunnel vision. You know how if you're really, really focused on, if I am, I'll just use first person singular, if I'm really focused on having things my way, I don't see things. I really don't see things. And I'm a walker, and I can just walk and put my minutes in, or I can open my eyes. And yesterday I was walking, and I noticed that the geese had goslings. I don't know about you, but they look so adorable. And I almost wanted to run up, and whenever I see them, I always wanted to run out toward the goslings and pick them up because they look so soft. I never do it, though, because I used to walk in a nature park at lunchtime, one place where I worked, and there was a goose defending a nest that was nearby, and the goose charged me. And I was like, oh, I keep away from irate geese, but that embrace has just want to share that with you. It's made so much of a difference for me. And for me, and Mary took the Welcoming Prayer book, her favorite book, Welcoming Prayer Practice, from her favorite book, Abandonment to Divine Providence by Jean-Pierre de Caussade. A lot of people say they don't like it. It's old language, but he talks about always turning our will over to the will of God. And the welcoming prayer for me is that how to do that, how to surrender. And more, the more I do contemplative practices, centering prayer, welcoming prayer, Lectio Divina, spiritual reading, the more and more what I understand is I am just creating a space in me for grace, for God's grace to come in and transform me. And I think it's such a powerful, it's an opening on my part. And so one of the ways I would like us to use the welcoming prayer, I have a couple more suggestions, is to use it when we're anticipating an event or meeting a person. We can do it ahead of time, because I don't know about you, if I'm walking into a challenging situation or know I have a challenging event, I not only have thoughts about that, but I have feelings about that. So I can do that ahead of time. We also know that if you do not do the welcoming prayer in the moment, you can do it afterwards. Perhaps at the end of the day, when you remember the situation and say, oh, I could have done the welcoming prayer, you can still do it. And one of the things that happens, one of the helps of that is the energy has started to surface, and I haven't really repressed it back. And let that energy out. And then there's the wonderful gift of caller ID. If someone's calling me and I have an issue with them, I don't have to pick up the phone right away, do I? I can let it go to voicemail. I can be aware of what's happening in my body. Do the welcoming prayer. And don't have to do it for a long time. Because if I have an issue with that person, as soon as I pick up the phone, my attitude, my energy is going to be transformed. So I have a sort of a story about caller ID from work. It's a little bigger than that, but I work with, I'm in IT. I program. I work with software. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And one time, a couple of years ago, I was working for this manager, and he said to me, we had the conversation, I want to know if this software can do this. I said, well, it's a very complex software. I'm still learning it. I don't know. And we talked about it on and off for a couple of months. And then I was standing in his office one day, and he said, I would like to know if this can do that. I said, okay. He said, I would like to have a meeting. Now, my first undergraduate major is English, so I understand that he said I. It was first person singular. He wanted the meeting. And so I said to him, well, who would you like to have at that meeting? And he said, oh, the whole team. Well, providentially, truly providentially, the team was located in different locations. So I set up the meeting, and it was a conference call because we were in different locations. And I adjourned the conference call, and I started the conference call. And I said, well, he would like to know if this software can do this. And his response was, well, where is the PowerPoint slide? I said, I don't have a PowerPoint slide. Well, if you don't have a PowerPoint slide, then there is no sense in having this meeting. We're wasting everybody's time. We'll have it another time. And I started to defend myself, but he said no. And so we hung up the call. I felt blindsided, broadsided. Broadside is a better word. I was angry. So the phone rang at my desk in my office. The phone number was from the building I knew he was in. I did not pick up the phone. I was not ready to deal with him. He would have gotten a piece of my mind he did not want. So the message light went on in my phone. And I said, I wonder who that message was from. I knew who it was from. I was pretty certain. I was not ready to deal with him. Because we have these choices. We don't have to react in the moment. We can choose. So I got up from my desk, and I walked down the stairs, the 3 flights of stairs to the bottom floor, and I walked out into the sun, took a deep breath, did the welcoming prayer, went back upstairs. Now, I will never say that if I do the welcoming prayer, this will happen. It will have a particular effect. But as I said before, it's a practice that opens me, that creates a space in me for God's grace. Now, he's not a bad guy, this guy, and he's just not one of the most intuitive people in the world. But when I got back and I picked up the message, this was what he had left on the message. He had said, I'm sorry. It appears that we were at odds on the call. He figured that out because I didn't pick up his phone call, I think. And he said, call me back. Here's my number, and we can talk about it. So I no longer wanted to do him any harm at that point in time. My anger was, because the welcoming prayer, what it does for me is it doesn't have that reactive energy of that anger. And I become much more rational. And so I called him back, and I said, I think you're right. I said, I picked up your message. I think we were at odds. He said, yeah, sometime when I'm in the office, let's talk about it. I said, I think that's a good idea. We never talked about it. I didn't initiate that conversation. But it's the way we can stop ourselves. That reactive self is not necessarily our best self, for sure. And so if we're new or we're renewing our experience of the welcoming prayer, how do we do it? How do we make it? Because after I go through this slide, I'll tell you how to do it in 15 seconds, because it is consent on the go. But it has to be yours. You have to know the words. You have to be able to. So practice, practice, practice. That was what Mary would tell us to do. Body checks throughout the day, especially waking and retiring. So we suggest that if you want to deepen your experience of the welcoming prayer, or or if you're just learning it, to pick a time of day, either upon waking or going to sleep, and just say, I'm going to scan my body. I'm just going to scan my body, and I'm going to do the welcoming prayer. And one of the gifts of aging is that there are usually places in our body where we can feel something. And we use those, because I don't know if it's something coming up from my unconscious or if it's just an ache, but it doesn't matter. And we use it in ordinary events of daily life. And observe the feelings, emotions, and sensations, thoughts, and commentaries in your body that are provoked by events and people in daily life. If pre-coronavirus time, and it'll be post too, because we will move through this. We don't know the timetable, but it's not ours to know the timetable. And I live by myself. I don't eat a lot of food, so my habit is to once or twice a week on my way home from work to stop at the grocery store. And I've never been able to figure out why retired people have to shop at the time of day the only time of day that I can shop. And some of my retired friends say, because they can. But we all have these little things that sort of upset us. And another thing is the support one another. We use it as a vestibule centering prayer, just to sort of settle in. And then we can support one another in the practice. Because really, as Mary said, it's irrational and illogical. It doesn't make any sense. But yet it leads to the healing, to our own personal healing and to transformation. And this is a quote from Mary. To welcome and to let go is one of the most radically loving, faith-filled gestures we can make in each moment of each day. It is an open-hearted embrace of all that is in ourselves and in the world. Well, and there is a welcoming prayer brochure that can be downloaded from the Contemplative Outreach site, and this is a quote from that. And I'm going to invite us to do the welcoming prayer again. I am going to begin to lead you, and then I'm going to let you complete the prayer on your own. It's about learning the words, opening to the process. So feel and sink into what you are experiencing in your body. You don't have to close your eyes. You can do it while you're driving, while you're walking. And then interiorly say the word welcome. And remember, what we are welcoming is we're welcoming what we are experiencing in our bodies as an opportunity to consent to the divine indwelling. And then we're going to say the letting go phrase. I let go of my desire for security, affection, control, and embrace this moment as it is. So continue to feel and sink into what you are experiencing in your body. And pray the welcoming prayer. And if you've closed your eyes, I invite you to open them. So I said that welcoming prayer was consent on the go. And Mary said you can do the welcoming prayer in 15 seconds and taught me how to do that. I was a little skeptical at first, but she was right. So at the time, I learned the welcoming prayer. I was doing computer programming, and it was programming in a scientific language, C. And some of the team members I had, they didn't have a lot of facility with English. English was not their first language. And the program manager, the project manager, he didn't have a lot of social skills. So what he would do, and it wasn't just to these non-English people for whom English was not their first language, he also did it to me. When people didn't understand what he was saying, he did the only thing in his bag of tricks. He yelled at them, because certainly then they would understand better if they yelled. And when he would do that, I would get this knot in my stomach. And so what Mary suggested, and I do it, she said, move your focus to the side of his face, just slightly. Feel and sink into what you are experiencing in your body. Welcome and let go. What we've done, in that 15 seconds, what I have done is I've broken that reactive energy that's starting to come up for me. And there's space. Once again, there's space for grace. I'm not reacting in a knee-jerk fashion. I am responding. And then Mary suggested that I say something to him like, could you please repeat what you said? I'm not sure I heard it. Could you please repeat what you said? I think you may have a good idea. Neither of which are lies. But I was open then to hear. I was open. And we can all use this. You know, we can all, there's just a little opportunities when we realize that we're really going to react emotionally. One of the things that we have started to do, one of the things we started to do in the last month on contemplative outreach is we're offering welcoming prayer guided meditations on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Eastern Time and Thursday evenings at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And you can find information about that on the meditation chapels on the contemplative outreach websites. And it's as a teacher of welcoming prayer, there are times really when I just like to be led through the welcoming prayer. And that's what we do in the space of a half an hour. Some input, but then also 2 experiences of welcoming prayer. And it's a powerful experience also, I think, of being united in prayer. As a matter of fact, this morning, one of the things I was remembering is that this weekend in Pittsburgh, there are about 50 people going through a 2-day welcoming prayer retreat through Zoom, and in Arizona, and there are 100 people going through a workshop today on Zoom. So we can't physically meet, but we are united. And the other thing I would suggest, here's my contact information, although I think most of you have that because you responded to the email that came to my email address. And I invite you, if you have any questions, you know, we are going to have questions and answers in a little bit, but if you have anything afterwards, just email me and then, you know, mention New York Quiet Day in the subject, and I'll get back to you. And I'd just like to close our formal presentation with a quote from Mark's Gospel, which I think is very helpful to us now in these days. On that day, as evening drew on, he said to them, "Let us cross to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. A violent squall came up, and waves were breaking over the boat, so that it was already filling up. Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. They woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Quiet, be still." The wind ceased, and there was great calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you terrified? Do you not yet have faith?" They were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this who even wind and sea obey?" So I'll turn the call back over to Lindsay for some guidance on the timing for where we're going.
Yes, what would you like to do, Teresa? You finished a little early. Would you like to continue to have a 10-minute break to get back at 2 for the question session, or should we expand the break to a little more than 15 minutes?
You know, and I really leave that up to you, Lindsay. I think you've run these quiet days before. I haven't, so I don't know what your sense is.
I think we probably can get away with, well, if we say 12 let's see, 12:45. Why don't we come back at 2? That way it's just simpler to remember.
Sure, that works. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Look forward to actually talking to you, too. Great.
Let me
Thank
see.
you.